Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Green Lantern, The Road Back. Take a look at this comic cover right here. Now, Green Lantern, The Road Back was done up in the early 90s. And at the time, Green Lantern as a comic was just not selling. It wasn't successful at all, and because of this, DC decided to restart the comic as a whole and use their old classic Silver Age Green Lantern as the star of the comic, Hal Jordan. Now, this is not to say that John Stewart or Guy Gardner, the Green Lanterns of the late 70s and the 80s, were not successful. They were very successful and popular characters. However, the Green Lantern comic just wasn't doing good. So they decided to bring back the character that was in the Green Lantern comics when it was at its most popular part, Hal Jordan. Now, Hal Jordan may be back to the comics, but he isn't his classic Hal Jordan stuff. Hal Jordan is a little older. He's a little bit more battle-tested, and he's a little bit more unsure about himself. See, what you have to realize is that eventually, in the comics, Hal Jordan gets possessed by an entity known as Parallax. Parallax uses him, makes him go evil. Hal Jordan eventually dies and gets brought back to life. However, before Parallax was ever a concept, what was really happening to Hal Jordan initially was that he was getting older and that he was kind of losing touch with himself, and he really needed to find himself. The gray hair he had was actually gray hair. It wasn't necessarily Parallax. It was just Hal getting older. However, this was totally dropped because they wanted to kill off Hal Jordan, have a good reason to do it, to bring in Kyle Rayner. So anyways, with that said, let's talk about the story itself, and let's try to think of it from what its original intention was to be. A story about Hal Jordan getting older, but becoming the Green Lantern once again. Now, the story starts off with Hal Jordan going from town to town in America. Sounds familiar to a story arc going on right now in a certain superhero we all know. But yes, Hal Jordan is going to town in America to find himself. See, in his old age, he kind of feels as though the Green Lantern has become him. In other words, he is no longer Hal Jordan, who happens to be the Green Lantern. He is the Green Lantern that just happens to be Hal Jordan. Being a superhero has consumed his life, and he wants to find balance between being Green Lantern and being Hal Jordan. So doing this, he decides not to use his powering at all and become a hobo. Hey, whatever works for you. While this is going on, John Stewart is captured by a Guardian known simply as the Old One. Now, it's worth knowing going into this comic that the Guardians have left this dimension. The Green Lantern Corps, with the exception of 3 individuals, has been destroyed. Only one Guardian was left to protect this universe, and he went crazy. And his dastardly plan? He wants to steal cities from different planets and put them all on Oa to make his own perfect little paradise. Okay, well, he's crazy, so I'll let it slide. So John Stewart is possessed and captured, and Hal Jordan is a hobo. So what about that last Green Lantern? Oh, that last Green Lantern. Guy Gardner. You know, Guy Gardner really has come a long way in the past few years. He's matured, he's kind of accepted by everyone in the superhero community. But back in the early 90s and the 80s, oh, Guy Gardner was a prick. And I loved her for him. Who else would bring a woman to a strip joint for their first date? Oh, Guy Gardner would. And he did. Read Justice League International. But Guy Gardner's a total prick in this. And how is he a prick? Well, he bothers Hal Jordan at every chance he gets and ruins everything Hal Jordan works for. However, Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner need to put whatever they have aside and help free John Stewart and stop this Old One. So the question is this: will Guy Gardner stop being a prick? Will Hal Jordan find himself? And will John Stewart have the will, the ability to break the hold, the possession that is on him, to fight against this insane Smurf? Yeah, he's a Smurf. Well, you'll have to read it, see. Let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Good. Well, for what its original intention was, a story of Hal Jordan finding himself, the concept wasn't that bad. Hal Jordan is a character that's been around for quite a long time, going into this for about 30-somewhat years, give or take a few years. So he's a character that needs to be revitalized, needs to be changed up. Every so often, characters that's been around for a long time need to have a facelift. I mean, God, if you look at Batman or Superman back when they showed up in the 30s, and look at them now, they are completely different. Sure, a lot of trace elements are still there, but they are completely different from what they were. Why? Because they need to evolve and change to keep things fresh, but also to evolve with the times. Hal Jordan is the same thing. At this point, with Hal Jordan, he needed something different. And for what it was, and what the intention was, it wasn't bad. In addition to that, I like how Guy Gardner is portrayed in this. I like the prickhead Guy Gardner. I mean, it's just fun. He's a douche, he's a dick, and you can't help but love him for it. The art in this, for the most part, is good. There's a few instances where it does border on line on what? For example, whenever superheroes are posed like this, flying in the air or like that, they always look like they're so tense. Like, know when you see muscle guys walking around like this, like they're holding luggage, thinking that they're cool, but there's really nothing there? It's kind of like what that looks like in here sometimes. In addition to that, some of the females look god-awful ugly like men. But besides that, the art is actually good. There's some parts where the art is nice. I mean, it's the art of the 90s. It has its high points, but it has its low points too. And the dialogue in this is good also. I also like the fact that they use all three Green Lanterns rather than just focus on Hal Jordan. Hal may be my favorite Green Lantern, but I love them all, so I like to see them all included into a story. Bad. My God, was this a long story. The pace of this was so slow, and nothing really even happened until the 4th or 5th issue. It was just a drag. So slow. In addition to that, the bad guy, the old one, he was boring. I know he's supposed to be crazy and all that stuff, but it was to the point that I wasn't even reading his dialogue. He started talking about shit that really didn't much matter. I didn't need to read it because it wasn't really going to be important. He's just blabbering on about how life sucks, or how he wants friends, or how he's blue and he doesn't like being blue, or whatever. He's just not interesting. In addition to that, everything gets wrapped up too nice and neatly. There's points in this where Hal Jordan is going through deep turmoil, trying to find out who he is. And then when a crisis arises, right away he says, well, I'm a Green Lantern and I will be a Green Lantern. That's who I am. Yeah, well, it would have been nice if it was at least dealt with a little bit more his transition into the decision that he did. Also, in addition to that, it would have been nice if they dealt with John Stewart's story a little bit more. Like I said, they used all the Green Lanterns in this, but out of all of them, John Stewart is the one that's used the least. Before this, John Stewart went crazy and killed, people died and shit, and you know all that. And he feels guilty about this, but it never gets resolved on if he feels guilty about it anymore or not. It just kind of ends. In addition to that, the action was very, very small in this. With the exception of the last few issues, no action at all. It's just walking. It's like watching Lord of the Rings. It's walking, 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 walking. Whether or not you should get it. Well, see, the biggest fault to the road back, other than it being long and dragging on, is the fact that none of this really freaking matters. First of all, there's a lot of continuity mess-ups. Like they say Hal Jordan's been Green Lantern for 15 years. I don't think so, Tim. No. This doesn't really much matter. This is a story about Hal Jordan getting older and dealing with getting older and finding himself in the universe. But it all kind of goes down the toilet when you realize it's just Parallax possessing him. So, removing that, looking past that, I still wouldn't recommend this. It's not horrible, but it's definitely not worth your money. It's not worth going out and picking up. If you did pick this up at a comic store, it would be $14. Isn't bad. You wouldn't lose too much money getting this. However, I would still recommend avoiding this. It's not necessary to your Green Lantern reading. It's not in any way, shape, or form a great Green Lantern story. and it kind of doesn't even matter, because a lot of things later in Green Lantern kind of just throws this out the window. So, Green Lantern, the road back, don't go down this road. Pick up something else. Like Batman, Nightfall. With that said, I'm going to end this review here. This is Andrew saying, peace out for now.